Hi, this is Janine Coswara bringing you a mixed media canvas today. Now firstly, I just went through all my scraps for this project and picked out a whole lot of coordinating papers from different ranges and then proceeded to cut them into random squares and rectangles that I'm just going to use later on to cover my canvas, and it's just a great way to use up even small, little scraps. Then I just use gel medium and I'm just applying it over the 12 by 12 canvas that I've got here, and then begin to stick down those cut squares and rectangles onto the canvas. And I just sort of put them down randomly. I don't want it to look neat. I want it to overlap one another and have longer and shorter bits, so I end up with a real patchwork effect. Then just take some gesso with a palette knife, and as you can see, I'm just roughly applying it all over the canvas. You can still see some of the paper coming through that, and then I've just dried it off so it's fully dry. And then once it's dry, I've taken one of the new 12 by 12 canvases, and again I'm just using gesso, and I'm using it with a palette knife, or you could use a credit card, it will do the same thing, and applying it over the top of that. And again, just dry it off before you then go in with some acrylic paint like I have done here. And I've just pushed that paint around with my finger in the groove aspect of it. And then I've also taken a damp cloth and I've just rubbed off that paint, because the gesso acts as a partial resist, so it means it's really easy to get a cloth and wipe it off over those raised up gesso bits, and that brings back the white of that gesso and just helps in keeping a multi-dimensional background, because this way I can get layers of colour on the very bottom of it and build it up from there, but still have the white spots showing through. And I've just spritzed on some glimmer mist. I've used patina and timeless lilac, and also some Cadillac pink over the top of it. And again, I've just gone and taken a damp cloth and wiped off over those circles again. And this time I'm using some texture paste over the top of this mask. And the reason I'm using texture paste this time is, again, it will build up and give a raised up area, but texture paste is actually really porous. So once you've put that texture paste on, it's actually going to hold colour really well, unlike the gesso, which acts as a resist. This is actually going to hold it. And I've gone and I've put the different masks on, and while it's still damp, I've just gone down and carefully, you could dry in between it, but I was a bit lazy and just went through and just carefully added more of the masking down to the lower parts of it as well. And as you can see here, when I've spritzed it with a sunflower glimmer mist, it's really added a dark colour to those dry areas of texture paste. And I've also gone through now and I've spritzed with the Cadillac pink over the poppy aspect of the mask, and again just taking that damp cloth and wiping away any excess glimmer mist around that area, because I'm just trying to achieve colour on those raised up sections without too much colour on the background at this stage. I'll work on that a bit later. And again, just drying it off between applications so it doesn't run into each other and you get sort of clearer colours between it. And then I've used the patina again, and again just wiping off the excess from off those white circles. And you can see now that the different layers are really coming up in the canvas as I go through and add more and more of the glimmer mist in areas of that. And I've also done the patina down the bottom, and I've also gone back in and added some green as well, and I just used key lime down the bottom, and it sort of took a bit of the bluish away and gave it a bit more green colour. Now that's it finished in the background, and my actual videoing ran out, but I actually went back with some iridescent medium and rubbed some iridescent medium for acrylic paint over it, and actually acted to blend and soften a lot of that colour. It was a really beautiful effect, and also giving a pearlescent glaze. Now here I've traced my image that I want for my paper piecing, And I've just put it onto tracing paper, and rather than cutting out the tracing paper and then retracing it onto something else, I've actually just stuck the cutout bit, just like a bit of a template, and cut it around what's stuck to the piece of paper in the background. And again, all I'm using are the scraps that I've got from my stash, and some of these are quite old paper ranges, but the colours work really, really well. Now, I can't actually draw very well, so I've cheated, and I've found a image in a child's colouring book, and then that's what I've used for my templates for this design. So you don't have to be brilliant at drawing or anything like that. You can still achieve really good results. And once I've cut these different aspects of it out, I've just gone over it with one of the chalkboard, or one of the chalks, and it's dark rust that I've used just to give a bit of definition, and then also use the distress tool just to shabby up those edges slightly, and that will help. So there's no real sharp, blunt cut edges, and just, again, adds a little bit more dimension and stuff back into it. And all the aspects I've gone through and just built up the whole paper piecing element of this design, and cutting very small little bits for the, like in the mushroom, those little veins and stuff that are inside the mushroom. And it takes a little bit of time, and I did ink all those little tiny bits as I was doing it. And I got very dirty fingers in the process as I inked them and stuck them down, but you'll notice that it actually really helps in the overall appearance of the design once you see it all stuck down like that. And I did little mushrooms as well, which were really cute. It all came with it, and just sort of layered it together, and then stuck it down just with some Helmar 450 at the base of my canvas. And again, my little fairy, I cut out the body separate to the rest, just on tracing paper after tracing it around, sticking it to the back of my printed paper. Obviously, you flip it upside down so it comes out the direction that you want the good side to be. And I've used the Rondell collection for this, because on that reverse side, it's perfect colour for skin tones. So you'll see once this is cut out that it's got really good skin tones for making the body. And I've kept things like the arms, which need to sit over other elements. I cut that out as a separate piece, and just gone back in with a Sharpie pen and just added in some of the definition for like the ankle bones and the between the legs and that sort of thing. Now, I'm onto the clothing now, and first of all, I cut it out of white cardstock, the little dress, but I didn't really like it much, and I wanted to give it a bit more texture, so I've just ripped a sheet of muslin, and then after I've ripped that muslin, I've put 450 on, and I've frayed it, and I've run it, and just stuck it all on in strips going upward and downward to create the little frayed dress, which I thought was quite fitting for a little fairy to have sort of a very rustic frayed sort of dress to her. Then I've just applied that arm over it. Now for my wings, I've just used a combination of that iridescent medium for acrylic paint, as well as a Daler pearlescent acrylic in purple, and I've mixed the two together, and that's actually lightened it. So on one wing I did it slightly darker, and on the other I did it in a lighter shade, and they get layered over one another, and it sort of wrinkles up on the tissue paper or the tracing paper that I've used, and it wrinkles that up and just gives a little bit more texture. And as you can see there's the you've got just those two lines of the wing. And then I went onto the face, and still using exactly the same technique, but this time I'm tracing it out, but this time I'm actually wanting to put the facial features in on my cutout head. So I've done the old thing that you did when you were a kid, got the tracing paper, went over the back of it with my lead pencil, and then flipped it back over and went over it again, yet again, with the lead pencil, and the lead on the back of it will then transfer onto my image, and that gave me guidelines to then go over it with my black pen to put the details of her face in it. And I've just used some artist pens to add some colour into her face, some green eyes and some pink into her lips, and a little bit into sort of her pixie style ear as well. to get that looking a little bit more realistic. And then I have to sort of think about what I'm going to do as far as hair goes. And that also becomes quite interesting to work that out. So I found some really old paper again, going back to the rainbow watercolor range. And then just paper piecing that as well, cutting around it and adding that hair back in. Now, on my first cut, I found that because I'm tracing and then cutting it out, things aren't an exact match. So I sort of had to problem solve around this issue. What I did is I went in and did it first thing, and I went, oh, it doesn't quite sit right. So then I traced the lower half of her hair again and cut out the lower half of her hair, and just by cutting little bits out here and there, I was able to make it look a bit more seamless, that there was an upper and lower layer to her hair. And then it actually worked out quite well because I was able to sit the top half over the top and then slip the other section in underneath. And that just sort of meant that it all came quite well together. And now, after I've done that, I'm now going to apply the wings. Now, I purposely kept the wings in tissue because I wanted them to hopefully have a bit more of a opaqueness to them and show up the texture underneath, but still see the colour of her wings. So just using gel medium again, just apply the gel medium to your canvas, stick down your element, and then just sort of go back over with your brush or with your finger and press it in so it seals in without any bubbles. And then I've stuck my girl down, and now I'm going over just with some stickles, and I'm just going to add even more glittery, effects over the page, because this is a canvas that I want for my daughter's room, and every girl loves a little bit of glitter, so I'm just adding a little bit back in there. And I use diamond down on the bottom, but I actually use gold over the yellow floral elements at the top, just because that was going to stand out a little bit more and make it a little bit more obvious on the canvas that they had that glitter effect. Now, because of all the texture in the background of the canvas, you can't put lettering down easily and you can't put a rub-on easily, and my way around this is to take a stamp and stamp it onto that tissue paper, and then again just using your gel medium, gel it onto that page, and obviously the tissue paper then becomes translucent over the areas as it seals in, and it appears like you have used a rub-on, but it's actually just the gel medium over that tissue paper, and that's how I can apply the word to it. So you can see there the overall effects of what I've created and all the little details, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you.